Hi everyone, in today's video we're going to talk about blockchain and supply chain. So I met Giga last year. We were in a conference in Sydney. We had a beer and I said, oh, this is the crypto guy and he's talking about supply chain. So we had a good chat, and after 1 year he came back to visit me, and I have so many questions about blockchain because I'm not an expert and I got so many questions. What is blockchain? How can we use it? How can I become an expert? Is it more expensive? And that's why I invited my friend Giga to reply to all these questions. Giga, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you, Eddie, for having me on your channel, ABC Supply Chains. It's really fun to meet you again after a year. Certainly, many things have changed. You know, we are in a very kind of turbulent era, but I guess this interview is going to be interesting because we're going to unveil things
finally
with respect to this. Finally, after a year.
So, just tell me your story. Who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, so essentially what we do at our organization, Trace Labs, is we improve visibility in supply chains. And we have been doing this for the last 10 years. As college dropouts, we never finished college, at least not the master thesis, because we found supply chains to be so much exciting. Okay. And we helped companies improve transparency so that consumers would know what kind of products they're buying, mostly with respect to provenance of products, quality of products. And we started off in food supply chains. Then 2013 we launched our company, and 2016, because this is connected to blockchain as well, we started experimenting with adding blockchain components into our solutions. And then very quickly we saw that blockchain is not a silver bullet for supply chains, that there are cost considerations. Blockchain does not have all the required database properties. And 2016-17 we started open sourcing the OriginTrail protocol. So OriginTrail is our core product, and it is addressing some of the issues that when you stumble upon when using blockchain for supply chains, such as scalability, cost, and also lack of database features. So since then, since the launch of the OriginTrail protocol, we have been implementing it in US, Europe, China, and it's been a very exciting very fruitful 3 years.
So you are one of the first to invest in like blockchain, but in supply chain. And I have 10 questions for you. My first one is, like, for normal people like me, like, give me what is your simplest definition of what is a blockchain?
I think we need to look into what it enables. It essentially enables trust. So if we exchange data in a very much centralized way, we can always be skeptical as to whether or not someone has tampered with that data. If we are to apply blockchain for exchanging data, then we essentially create this trustless environment whereby traditional way of generating trust is no more not necessary anymore. And you put this kind of burden of delivering trust onto blockchain. So what blockchain is, essentially, it delivers trust between different parties exchanging data. And this is also why we use blockchain for. So this is kind of the simplest definition, but of course you can delve into technicalities.
So it's all about trust. And what is the main difference between a database and a blockchain? Because I could do it on a database if I have a good save.
Well, essentially, blockchain is also some sort of a database. It's a very primitive database. You would store and exchange data in blocks, in hashes, and it has properties of a database. What you're referring to here is most probably a centralized database versus blockchain, which is a kind of a decentralized and distributed ledger. And the main difference here is that from the cost perspective, blockchain, especially public blockchains, are more expensive than using a typical centralized database, but you get this trust factor in it, and trust typically costs money. So this is also one of the things that is kind of both limitation of blockchain and also an upsell blockchain. So you don't get trust when you're only storing data in your centralized database, whereas using decentralized technology like blockchain, it gives you this property, and this property of trust actually comes with a cost.
So how much, what is the difference between, how much is it? Is it 50% more expensive? Can you give us a number?
It depends on how you use it. So initially, when we started using public blockchain in 2016, for recording hashes, essentially fingerprints of the data that was sent to us from ERP systems of a dairy producer back then. We did a few tests whereby you would not only put hash, so fingerprint on the blockchain, but you would actually store more data, and it was very costly. So that was like orders of magnitude more expensive than typical database. So that's without using blockchain without grain of salt.
Okay.
When we applied the common sense approach towards using blockchain, so using it only for what it is intended to do, so for the as a layer of trust, you can significantly put the cost down. And this is where it can be so. You actually compare apples and pears, but of course, simply for exchanging data and storing data, blockchain is way more expensive.
Okay.
But you would not be using it for this.
Okay.
And also kind of the value. So if you kind of counterbalance the value with the cost, the value of using blockchain in the right way, of course. So using it in a minimum way, only for the kind of a consensus layer.
Yeah.
Whereas you put the data exchanges off chain, the value itself is it significantly surpasses the value of just using centralized database. We will need to go into a specific example, but
so it's not about cost; it's about value.
It's about value.
Okay.
Definitely.
So my next question is: how can we use blockchain supply chain? What are the first steps, the obvious first projects we should start?
Yeah, it depends on the company problem. Companies typically come to us when they have certain traceability issues, or when they have transparency issues within their supply chains. And the best first step would be to get themselves educated. There is plethora of resources available online. You can go on YouTube. There are a lot of both detailed and high-level examples of how to use blockchain. So self-education makes a lot of sense initially. Okay. Second step would be to contact perhaps a company that could could take a look into your problem, into your business model as well, and then give you a workshop on how to potentially apply blockchain technology in your case.
But what are the top 3 problems that you're going to solve with blockchain?
When it comes to data exchanges, there are several problems. So not only one problem, and there are several technologies and open data models that you should apply if you want to use blockchain. So making data more coherent in a supply chain requires you not only to use blockchain technology in a kind of minimum way, but also data models, because essentially what you're tackling here is a problem of bad data. And problem of bad data has 3 aspects. First aspect, of course, is the data is not structured well. And if you use blockchain without structuring data well initially, then you're using it in a garbage in, garbage out mode. Second aspect of bad data is that bad data is untrusted data. So this is where, after structuring data in the right way, the second problem, trusted data, you would apply decentralized technology, blockchain, in order to make sure that the data we exchange is actually trusted. But of course, after structuring data. The third problem, if you want to scale up the solution in an enterprise setting, and if you want to invite your suppliers, your supplier's supplier, or kind of at least 2 parties into your consortium, you would need to make sure that the solution itself, so the middleware, is interoperable with your partners. And this is where the problem of data interoperability comes into effect. So these are kind of the 3 problems that, kind of baseline problems that companies have: bad data, unstructured data, and interoperability. Those 3 issues can be resolved using such technologies.
Amazing. That's a big challenge. Like just the first one, bad data and structure, are really challenging for us. And can you give us maybe your main projects you're working today, just to give some examples about, because I know you're working on large scale projects. Can you give us maybe 2 or 3 examples?
One of the most interesting, or perhaps the flagship examples right now, is done with the British Standards Institution. Now they're working under the Queen's Charter for, I think, like 100 years. And they're essentially helping companies to become more trustworthy in international environment. And the trustworthiness is of course based on on auditing different companies in different parts of the world.
Okay.
And one of the solutions that we co-developed together with them is called Scan Trusted Factory. And Scan is essentially an organization that is associating the biggest retailers in the US, such as Walmart, Home Depot, Disney, Trader Joe, etc. And the main aim with that solution is to allow those retailers to exchange data, audit data about the companies exporting or importing products in the United States of America. So you would have some 18,000 auditing reports inside this solution, and this is helping all those retailers to exchange. So they are competitors essentially, and they would be using our solution in order to show to their peers in the system that the auditing reports actually are have been conducted. And as a bottom line, it's not fake. Yeah. Okay. So essentially, as a bottom line, each specific retailer would not need to perform audit on the same company if if the company that is appearing in his network already conducted audit. So this is essentially improving efficiency in auditing process. So this is one of the example. Another example, perhaps more straightforward, is the traceability example. We work with one of the largest poultry producer in Southeastern Europe, and we help them trace chicken. So essentially, you as a consumer would go into a store, you would scan a product, and then you would see where the product's coming from for each specific batch of that chicken. So this is perhaps example number 2. Going forward, perhaps with the examples, we are also in the supply chains of railway, so we are in transportation. We work with the Swiss Federal Railways, and our aim there is to make data more coherent, so that the Swiss railway company would know very much immediately where certain material is coming from. And essentially that would mean that the transportation is made safer, and this is very much important for bigger systems. If something deteriorates in your railway system, for example, you can immediately correlate that material that was faulty with your supplier, and you can react more quickly and essentially improve the safety of passengers. So supply chain uses are very much broad.
So visibility, safety, transparency,
and trust.
Cool projects. Okay, and like now I know many people are working, like I was working on SAP or Oracle for many years, and I see all around the world blockchain is coming, blah blah blah, but in the meantime I'm still on my SAP screen and nothing is changing for me. So how do you see this company like SAP or Oracle moving to the blockchain? Do you see any change?
Both SAP, Oracle, IBM, and the bigger companies are offering their blockchain solutions. And perhaps one of the things that is worthy of pointing out is that blockchain is not a silver bullet. You need to take into consideration the existing legacy infrastructure, which can be provided by either of those companies and some third parties, and you need to take into consideration data models. So essentially, the first steps would be to model data in a way that we can all speak the same language. So we're speaking English right now in the same way. The data should be structured in the same way, so that when you exchange data, so this is number
but should I use SAP directly, or should I use another technology connecting to my SAP HANA, for example?
It's either or. You can, so whatever you're comfortable with as a, let's say, supply chain director. The main thing though is that whatever solution you use is interoperable with the middleware that your peers in the network might be using. And middleware technologies, so one of the examples of a good middleware technology is that they're focused on using standards such as GS1, EPCIS standard, which is product visibility.
Of course,
Another one is W3C. This is for verifiable credentials, so that you can exchange certificates or any credential that is then structured according to this. And this is kind of in our opinion, a very good middleware technology or blockchain technology, the one that is taking into consideration open data models. And when you do so, you can go either or, as long as you're being mindful and your vendor is mindful that they should first of all teach you how to structure data. This is highly important.
Structure and good data. Okay, so once again, okay, I'm a supply chain director for a retail company or FMCG company. You say, how should I start? I want to work with blockchain because I have massive issues with the quality of my data, the structure of my data. How should I start? How should I start as a supply chain director? Because I have no idea where to start.
Yeah, I think you should always start with why.
Okay.
So, although blockchain is kind of a very thin layer technology that is definitely not almighty, you should always question yourself, why would I use this type of the technology? So if you understand why you're doing it, then it's much easier to select the best course and also select perhaps the best technology to start experimenting on. Most of these technologies are open source, and once you understand what problem would you like to solve, once you have gone through different courses, then you can perhaps visit one of the kind of vendors, and most of them are kind of are part of different associations. We, for example, we have an association called Trace Alliance, and within Trace Alliance we also educate professionals like this. You also have Hyperledger Foundation, you have Beta Association, you have all different associations which might not even charge you any money in order to get educated, as long as you, of course, consuming something that is open source. And so it's why, and then getting the resources that you need to address certain problem within your company if you're a manager in this area.
Okay, and now let's say I'm a demand planner or I'm a supply chain project manager and I want to be an expert in supply chain and blockchain. How do I start? How do I become an expert in blockchain and supply chain? What are the first steps?
So if you are working in the...
Yeah, let's say I'm a supply chain project manager working on logistics projects, demand planning projects, and I want to be part of this new trend of blockchain expertise. How can I become a blockchain expert, but related to supply chain? Related to
supply chains. Again, I mean, it's way easier right now than it was, let's say, a couple of years ago. Right now, there are so many resources online. If you just type in blockchain for supply chains, you're definitely going to get a bit more granular response to how to do this. But my kind of personal advice would be to stay curious and do not dig yourself into one specific solution. So keep open-minded, because this is kind of the area of technology that is developing very quickly, and something that is cool right now, or very hype-ish right now, might be obsolete tomorrow. But the good thing is it's all based on the open source components, so you can, if you keep your mind flexible, you can tomorrow perhaps add certain components which are new, which are more applicable.
But what are the foundation? Because I guess you have foundation, not necessarily in blockchain directly, but what are the foundations?
Yeah, definitely you should look into open source and open data models, because this is kind of an ABC of supply chains, just like your channel would point out.
Of course.
So look into perhaps GS1. So GS1 is a global organization that is also responsible for barcode system. And go on the website, be curious about the standards, because all the biggest companies are using those standards, and these standards are kind of underpinning all the use cases of blockchain. Also, something which is a bit more advanced and perhaps a bit less advertised in supply chain space is the W3C organization.
W3C.
W3C. And again, both organizations are very fundamental yet crucial for any type of data exchanges. And if you want to upgrade data exchange using decentralized technologies, you're still using the same elements. So those two organizations, I believe, are crucial right now. And then adding on top any type of decentralized solution, you're free to choose. There are so many different providers, and when choosing them, choosing which perhaps course to take, make sure that you're keeping your mind open, because things might be obsolete tomorrow, but the foundation remains the same. So data structure is key here.
Okay, so data structure and open data models, GS1 and W3C.
Right. Yeah.
Great. So how do you see COVID is impacting the blockchain business? Do you think it's going to slow down or the opposite?
Companies are becoming more curious in using blockchain in supply chains because of the COVID situation. People are no longer able to travel as often as they could before, And blockchain is promising to replace this layer of trust, of humans with the technology. So definitely we see the demand growing.
Okay, I can see, like, for example, many people from procurement were traveling to China or Asia to make sure the quality and all the compliance was okay, and today they can't travel. And I can really see this lack of trust right now because we don't have the same communication than before. And Zoom is great, but I don't think it's enough to make sure your data is clean and all your process is compliant to your expectations. So
yeah, actually, it seems that companies that have somehow waited for longer periods before they started digital transformation or enabling processes using this and that technology are now waking up.
Okay, so that's a good trend for blockchain and supply chain. My last question now: what is the future of blockchain in supply chain? How do you think it's going to be open source? Do you see the big companies like Microsoft, Amazon, or Google is going to take the lead on the blockchain as well? How do you feel?
I feel that, predominantly people believe that there's not going to be a single blockchain technology, and most probably we're going to see different decentralized or distributed ledgers implemented. And then again, crucial point in the future for the value creation from these various different blockchain solutions is going to be the open data models, again, like EPCIS, GS1, W3C, verifiable credentials, for example, which are going to power interoperability between these different blockchain ecosystems. And I believe that companies should be free to choose. So oftentimes governments or companies, bigger companies, would like to vendor lock in you into their own specific solution or the solution that they prefer. So it's good that we have this free market mentality and that we apply something that we believe is best. But then again, just look into data structure first, because once you have that, it's going to be much easier to interact with all other different ecosystems.
So good future for blockchain and supply chain.
Yeah, good, absolutely.
Great. I have a last question again. Should I really buy Bitcoin today?
Oh, personally, I'm not. This is not a financial advice, definitely. But I'm a huge believer in cryptocurrencies, and blockchain definitely as the king of cryptocurrencies. I believe is a good investment. But you should only invest as much as you're willing to lose. So invest a small portion. It's a very risky thing. So
disclaimer: I'm not a crypto investor. This is nothing about that.
No, it's a very risky investment, but also very very high upside. But do your homework, read about the whole thing so that you are mindful of the risks.
Thank you, Giga, for this great interview. It was great to see you again. And
likewise, thank you for inviting.
I know it's challenging not to meet people at this day because we are all working online, and it was really great to see you. And guys, if you have any questions about blockchain, make sure to add your comments, and I will make sure to reply or ask to Giga to make sure we have all these answers to how to use blockchain in supply chain. I'll see you for the next video.